What's up everyone, it's Prometheus, and for a while now I've had a lot of questions here and on Instagram about how to dial in a light roasted coffee for espresso. So as I cracked open this fresh bag of light roasted Costa Rican coffee from Proud Mary, I felt like this is the perfect opportunity to talk y'all through the process. If you've been following the channel for a little while, pretty recently I put out a video on how to read a coffee bag, and that really helps out with understanding the dial-in. You can really sit down, take all the information from the bag, from the website, and your general understanding of coffee, and really create a game plan before you even grind one bean. And I think that is key to the dial-in process, whether it's light, medium, or dark roast coffee. So now let's go over the 5 variables we want to consider as we set up our dial-in game plan. Brew temperature I find is a factor that's often overlooked when it comes to dialing in espresso. But not every machine has this functionality, and it definitely is a bit more on the advanced side of espresso theory. But taking into account what we know about the coffee already, that it's a light roast and grown at 1500 meters, we can already assume it's going to be a relatively dense coffee. This density means it's going to be harder to extract, so using a hotter brew temp will help pull out and break down more soluble compounds faster so we get more flavor out of the coffee.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
About 6 months ago, I dropped my standard dose for personal consumption from 20 grams to 17 grams. Now I did this for 2 different reasons. The first reason is I really wanted to stretch out these bags of coffee and make sure I wasn't going through them super quickly. But the second reason is because lower doses are easier to extract, and since I tend to lean into denser coffees in the medium to light range, this switch just made more sense to me. And I'm a firm believer that in terms of dosing lighter roasted coffees, going with less often means you're getting more extraction, more flavor, and your coffee bag lasts longer. It's a win all the way around. As you most likely already know by now, when it comes to espresso, grind size and brew time go hand in hand. But in case you didn't, here are the bullet points. A coarser grind will flow faster and extract less. A finer grind will flow slower and extract more. But you'll most likely want to try and find a happy medium between the two, because too far in either direction is generally not going to be ideal. Since we're already using a higher brew temperature at 205 degrees Fahrenheit and a lower dose at 17 grams in, we'll actually be able to get an ideal extraction with a little less brew time. This also means a slightly coarser grind, which also allows for a more even flow of water through the puck, which again aids in extraction. This shot being a great example of that, as it ran 38 grams in 22 seconds, which by traditional standards is a bit fast, but ended up well within the ideal extraction standards, and ultimately being the most balanced shot of the day with the most body and flavor. The yield is actually the simplest factor in the whole dial-in process, and what it's going to come down to is your personal preferences. So the question to ask yourself is, what do you want from the shot? More yield does mean more extraction, at least until the point of diminishing returns, but it does mean less strength. On the opposite side of the coin, less yield means less extraction, but more intensity. Personally, when it comes to lighter roasted coffees with fruitier or brighter notes, I tend to aim for the medium to high yield. I do this because it not only extracts more, but it also spreads out more of those complex notes in the coffee, and it tends to mellow out the acidity. Every once in a while, your first pull will be great, but let's face it, as home baristas or professional baristas, if we were ever satisfied with what we made, we wouldn't be here right now. That being said, there will likely be at least one adjustment to be made during your whole dial-in process. So in this section, I'm going to go over a few of the most common negative flavor outcomes and how to fix them. If you're buying light roasted coffees and making espresso with them, it's likely you're pretty well accustomed to acidity, and you generally probably like it. But no one likes drinking battery acid. So if the shot comes out too acidic, you've got some options. Some would recommend reducing brew temperature, but in terms of getting the most out of your light roast espresso, I tend to save that as a last-ditch effort. I generally find the best results by grinding finer and slightly increasing the brew time. If the shot doesn't carry the amount of flavor and richness you're looking for, the best way to handle this is to reduce the yield. This works well because the first 10 or so seconds of a shot is going to be the richest and fullest, hence the popularity of a ristretto. But this is a compromise, as it will reduce the balance and overall extraction of your espresso. So just like all other adjustments, keep them small and controlled. Sourness is often a clue to under-extraction. Considering we've done so much in the dial-in process to help the denser, lighter roast extract more, it can be a bit frustrating to run into this one. But we have some things we can adjust to move away from the sourness. I would generally start with a slightly finer grind, and if it persists, an increased yield. When this happens with light roasts, it's a pretty clear signal of over-extraction, as they aren't really prone to overly bitter flavors, so you have a few options to help avoid this. I'm sure you remember the decisions we made throughout this process are to maximize extraction, so now we just need to pull that back in a little bit. So in my experience, the best way to do that for light roasts is to decrease the brew time. The longer the water is in contact with the coffee, the more it extracts, so lowering that contact time will produce less extraction. To do this, make a small adjustment coarser to allow for a faster flow of water through the puck. If it persists, you can begin reducing the yield. But always remember to only adjust one variable at a time. If you start doing multiple variables at once, you're not really going to know how each variable is affecting what's happening in the cup, and it's just going to get confusing and you're going to end up wasting coffee. In the end, you may have already noticed that a lot of these steps are pretty closely related with each other. Making espresso, regardless of roast level, is kind of like dominoes. Everything must be aligned and fall in order to get the outcome you're looking for. If one piece is not set up properly, all of the other pieces aren't going to get you where you want to be. But sitting down and planning out your recipe prior to diving in is an invaluable part of the process that can not only save you time, but also coffee. So adding to that, I highly recommend keeping a notebook with all the relevant details of your past dial-ins for reference when you have similar coffees on your bar. But anyway, I think it's time to wrap this one up, and I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on light roasted espresso? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you have difficulties dialing them in? Let me know down below along with any other questions you might have, and as always, I'll see y'all next week. And of course, a big thank you to my September Patreons, Ads, James B, Jacob P, David, Christopher, John K, Squeegee, Roe, Brian, Lisa, Obo, Andre, Rick Racer, Sean, Noel, Spookus, Bound Coffee, Mika, Samantha, Nathan, Claire, Steven, James K, Josh, Andrew Horrison, Bobby, Corey C, Curry, Jeff Roth, Ninja Warrior Coffee, Testing 123, Jason, Dave B, Jerry, RD, Tim, Matt, Tony, Zachary V, Tyler, UK Espresso, Robert, Underdunk, Jeffrey, and Oliver. And of course, a big thank you to the barista and barback tiers. If you want any information on my Patreon, there's a link in the description and in the upper right hand corner right now. And of course, a big thank you to you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Follow my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.